stress, what is it? The kind of dictionary definition is it's an emotional and physiological response to an adverse or demanding situation. So it affects us not just emotionally, as in how we think and how we feel, it also affects us on a physiological level. And a lot of what we're going to look at today is the physiological impact of stress. What happens to our bodies when we are under stress, when we're experiencing stress? Interestingly, there's no set medical definition of stress. And depending on who you talk to, the different causes of stress will vary. Some people say stress is largely an internal response to external things, and other people will say it's external things causing you to have a response. I think for me, the real interest in recent years has been the mind-body connection, and how understanding how stress has an impact on our body, and then also being able to use our bodies and our physiology, and we're going to look at this in a bit, to actually alleviate the symptoms of stress, I think is a really interesting thing. When we talk about stress, we're talking about physical, emotional effects of a stressful situation. So the stressful situation, what we call the stimulus, we're going to call them the stressors. Okay, so the stress is our response, okay, how we feel in our bodies and our minds, our emotions, whereas the thing that causes it, we will call the stressor. There are two different types. Well, there's more than two, but there's two different types we'll talk about. We're going to talk about acute stress, okay? And that's when you have a sudden burst of stress, a sudden bout of it. That, although it's called acute stress, and at the time it happens to you, it feels horrible, is actually very normal, okay? And one of the things I'm going to look at with you today is actually, we are hardwired that way. That is in our how our bodies have evolved. It's how it's how we're built. Basically, we are built to have certain stress responses at certain times. Although it feels very unpleasant at the time, it is normal. I was in preparation for this. I was kind of thinking, what's a good way to put it? Someone summed it up once that we're apes with anxiety. Okay, it's a nice way of putting it. But it is normal, and I'll explain how normal it is. The other type, though, is what we call chronic stress, and this is what we have to watch out for. This is where you are under a period of stress, and it might not be as high a level of stress as the acute stress, but it's a steady, persistent, consistent level of stress for a number of weeks or even months. And that's the type of stress that's actually really dangerous. And I'm going to look at the physiological impact of that as well. So there's difference between acute stress and chronic stress. This is a bit I like to hand over to you guys. What I want to start with is the physiological things. What does your body feel like when you are stressed? So if anyone wants to kind of chip in here and tell me some of the symptoms of stress, we've all experienced it. What are some of the symptoms of stress that you guys experience when you feel it? Sweaty. So sweats is one, yeah? Now, sometimes when you get that wave, that acute sudden burst of anxiety or stress, they're the same thing, really. You will notice you go very hot. You get a sudden hot flush, and then you might start feeling quite cold, okay? But there's that heat that suddenly comes on and you sweat, yeah? Sweatiness, absolutely. Anyone else?
Concentration.
It doesn't necessarily go, it's that your focus shifts to the thing that you're stressed about. So rather than looking at the things you've got to do, you're looking at, I've got this deadline looming. And you can't actually get on with the other stuff because you're so preoccupied with the stress. It's a bit like tunnel vision, isn't it? It's all we see is the stressor, the problem. Yeah, really good one. Thank you, Kathy. Anyone else?
Clenching your jaw, grinding
Clenching your jaw.
your teeth.
Yeah. And do it now. Seriously, everyone, do it now. Clench your jaw, and you can almost turn it on. You know what it feels like. Yeah, we clench, and it's not just that. It's not just that. We actually clench a lot more. Our necks, we go down like that. Our shoulders go up. Our main muscle groups actually tense up. Our arms, not our hands, our arms and our legs tense up. We get in, it's a very kind of defensive posture, isn't it? We're almost curling up into a ball. Really good. Thank you, Morat. Anyone else? It's pumping. Yeah, your heart starts to go. In turn with that, your blood pressure will rise. So people that are having chronic stress will have high blood pressure through the roof. But yeah, your heartbeat racing away, high blood pressure. You might also breathe faster as well. And you'll be breathing in a different way. When I go into my daughter's school, I've done it once or twice, to talk about anxiety and funny feelings like that. They love it when I tell them that we adults don't breathe properly. They think that's hilarious. And actually we don't. When we're stressed, we breathe short, shallow breaths from our upper respiratory. We're using about half of our lungs. Okay. And I'll come to that in a bit. That's not healthy. But we're breathing faster. We're actually taking in more and more oxygen. Okay. And as a result of breathing faster like that, our heart might beat faster to pump that oxygenated blood around our body. Okay. So sweats, muscular tension, temperature change, racing heart, anything else? Oh, our focus goes. Any others?
Sometimes develop a stammer.
Right. Yeah. Some people do. And one of the things that's quite interesting is your fine motor skills will go. So again, being able to talk, some people they can't get the words out. Other people might notice when you're stressed, your handwriting goes all over the place. Yeah, have we noticed that? It's things like this. So what's actually happening is your fine motor skills are going. Talking is actually a fine motor skill because you're moving your lips and your tongue around and stuff. Okay. Another one. DJ, you were going to say one?
Somebody said it already. Yeah. My brother stammers.
Okay. Some people really experience dry mouth. You might also, if you're feeling very anxious and very stressed, your appetite might go completely. Later on, however, you might really crave sugary sweet things. But in the moment, in the stressful moment, particularly with acute stress, your appetite goes completely. What about your stomach? What does your stomach do when you're stressed, folks? Churning. Wonderful. Yeah. Some people would say butterflies. I think some people experience butterflies, that kind of fluttery feeling. I was once working many years back with a young lad, and I was sharing some of this stuff. He really experienced anger, which is, again, a very powerful emotion, and it's very similar to stress. He would respond in an angry way rather than an anxious way to stress. And I said, "And do you experience butterflies?" He goes, "Nah, butterflies, I get the washing machine." And in the moment he said that, I knew what he meant. And he just went, ooh, it's that churning of the stomach. Yeah, absolutely. Your digestive system goes just to pot, doesn't it? If you have chronic stress, you might notice your bowels don't seem to work right. IBS, that sort of thing, very loose bowel movements and things like that is a symptom of long-term chronic stress. So butterflies, yeah. Breathing, racing heart, muscular tension. Another one is trembling, shaking, trembling. Yeah, there's loads of them. Headaches, blurred vision, nausea. Very good. Yeah, your appetite goes. I love going through these with people because it doesn't matter what group I work with. We always cannot come up with the same ones. And do you know why we come up with the same ones? Because these things are meant to happen. Every single one of these things serves a purpose. Okay, they're not pleasant, they're not nice, but they are meant to happen. We are hardwired for this. This is all a process in our bodies that kicks in. Okay, so I'm going to explain. DJ's looking puzzled as I'm saying that. I'm going to come to that in a moment and explain it and how we can alleviate some of these symptoms. I'm just going to do a little aside now. What causes stress? So when I'm teaching this as a subject, we look at the causes of stress, and generally there are 3 causes of stress. Work, work, and work. No, not just work, work, and work. First one is environmental, okay, where we are. Now, I love my home. I love my family. I love spending time at home, or I did until lockdown. There is something, and I'm sure there's a couple of people, Kathy, you're nodding there. I wonder if people have experienced this. This week, I've been able to go into college and actually work at my desk at the college. It's been bliss, just because it's a change of scenery. So yeah, it doesn't matter how comfortable we are in our homes. Sometimes we can get stressed out there. I mean, there are the most common environmental stressor is noise. Okay, and I don't know if anyone here has ever lived in a big city. Anyway, you might notice I'm not local. It's the accent that gives me away. I was born in Birmingham, so I lived in big cities all my life. York, a little bit of time in Warsaw in Poland, and back to Birmingham. When I went and moved here, it was so quiet, so peaceful, so just, when I did my master's degree, we moved back to the Midlands. So we were living in Birmingham whilst I was studying at Keele, just down the road. And it was so strange because I got used to the quiet here. And moving back to Birmingham, it's like constant sirens, constant noise of traffic, trains going past the house all the time, just constant noise. And that is actually a stressor. It's not healthy. It's not nice for us. Here, we're lucky it's a bit quieter, but there are other things that can be environmental things that get in the way. Inadequate housing is an environmental stressor. Overcrowding. That's how I felt. I mean, I've got 3 kids, 2 cats, a dog, a wife, 4 chickens. We've got a decent sized house, but when everyone's in it during lockdown, it felt crowded, and that itself brings on levels of stress. So that's environmental. So yeah, overcrowding. There was an amazing study of rats. This is now fascinating. Someone in the 60s called Calhoun did a study of overcrowding on rats. So got a colony of rats that they lived in enough space for 48, and he let them breed until there were 80 of them. So it was almost double the amount of rats that could be in that space. And the rats became depressed, unresponsive, violent, aggressive towards others. The females didn't nurture their offspring. Every time I hear this, I think of, crowded city streets. I think of the, crowded, unsatisfactory housing in kind of slum areas, and what happens to people's emotional well-being, crime rates in cities and things like that. Now, obviously, human beings are far more complicated creatures than rats, but certainly if it happens to rats, of course, it's going to happen to creatures like humans, where we feel we have this extra emotional capacity that perhaps rats don't. So it is going to have an impact. Another stressor is social. Okay, we are social creatures. My kind of psychological model that I work with is all about relationships, and I'm fascinated with relationships. I think relationships are wonderful, and we should nurture them and create them as often as possible. But bloody hell, they are hard work at times, aren't they? And anyone that's lived with anyone knows you can love your partner, wife, husband, whatever. You can absolutely love them, but there are times they just drive you absolutely mad as well. And it's stressful. Sharing a space with other people is stressful. So those relationships can be stressful as well. Friendships, I'm sure you've all got friends out there that you get on with really well, but you couldn't live with them. My best friend in the world, a guy called John, we've been friends since we were 6 years old. So that's 35 years of friendship. Okay. I adore him. I completely love him. He's my best friend. We go on holiday sometimes together, but a week is enough. We start to annoy each other after a week. So it's fascinating. Relationships can be difficult. Okay. Interacting with other people can be difficult. The last one, of course, the most obvious, is occupational. Work is stressful. He'll say sometimes funny things. Oh, you're a therapist. Gosh, you must be such a chilled out person. You must be able to really manage stress well. Okay, yeah, maybe. I tell you, this week at the moment, client work wise, things are fine, but my teaching responsibilities, I've got 17 3,500 word essays to mark by the middle of next week. I've got loads of exam papers to mark because the exam boards aren't doing it this year for my higher psychology students. I've got projects to mark. I've got to get things ready. Am I feeling the stress? Yes. Yes. You know, I think one of the interesting things is even if I work in mental health and things, we're not Superman, and we're not able to necessarily not get stressed. This is what I always say to people. What I want to do is normalize stress. This happens. Okay. But occupational stress is huge. And there is some things I have a problem with occupational stress. Is anyone here a manager? Yes. Please listen, because there are some real responsibilities here for managers. And there was a fascinating study done in 1997 of the British Civil Service. Okay, those at the top of the civil service suffered very little stress. Now, surely they are the ones who are responsible for everything and accountable for everything. They experienced very little stress, very little work-related, stress-related sickness. Okay. Every notch down the hierarchy, Marmot and his peers looked at, these were the researchers, every ladder, every step down the hierarchical ladder they looked at, there was an increase of stress. So the most stressed were those right at the bottom of the ladder, and the least stressed were the managers. The most stressed were the ones who were getting the smallest salaries, and the most stressed were the ones getting the biggest salaries. And this is seen again and again. I think it's a really important thing that managers are aware of their duties of care to their employees in managing stress and understanding stress. It's not just managers though, so I'm not going to pick on more active. Don't worry. There is stuff about working alone as well, and this blew my mind when I was looking at this. I've known this research for years, but it seems very appropriate in the age of COVID, where we've all been working perhaps at home alone, locked into our little rooms and things. So this was a study of Swedish sawmill workers back in the 70s, and a lot of them would work in social isolation for long periods of time. Okay, those that worked on their own for long periods of time had a higher level of stress hormones and more days off sick. And what have we been doing for the last year and a half? We've all been, because of the nature of COVID, we've all been forced into this kind of isolated way of working. So things like this are really worth being aware of. So those are the three main causes of stress: environmental, occupational, and social. I'm going to talk now about the engineering model. And I'm going to say this, I don't like this model, but this is the one that's commonly used. Okay, I don't like this model. This is based on Hooke's law of elasticity. Do we have any engineers in the house? No? Good. You're not going to be able to correct me then. I'm not an engineer. So Hooke's law of elasticity, it talks about how heavy loads produce deformation in materials. Okay, so I've got a little plastic thing here. It came with a bunch of flowers. Okay, this bends. Let's say I'm holding it at both ends and I put a weight in the middle. So imagine I've got a weight in the middle. That weight is the stress. Okay, you see how it's bending? That bend and the tension that builds up in that is what we call the strain. This is where we as a nation have stress wrong, particularly in the workplace. Because what we do when people are stressed in the workplace is we send them for some counseling or some therapy, or we give them some mindfulness. We teach them some meditation techniques and things. What we're doing there is we're helping them with the strain. We are not removing the stress. That's back to front, in my opinion. That is, all we're doing is we're teaching people to bend more. Okay? All we're doing is teaching them to bend more and be more flexible and put up with more stress. Okay? What we should actually be doing is addressing this stress coming down in the first place. All right? That is harder. That requires organizational change from the top down. Okay, it can't come from the bottom up, it has to come from the top down. So that's that one. But the one thing I do like about the engineering model of stress is this: everyone can bend a bit. Everyone can bend a bit. We can all take a bit of stress, can't we? But what happens if we go too far? What happens when the stress gets too much? We break. Okay, and the problem is, it can be very hard to fix afterwards. Sometimes we will bend so much, see if I can do it without breaking it, there we are, that we remain bent out of shape as well. Or was the sound gone? The stress will be so much that it actually damages us. Look, we're permanently broken by that, permanently bent out of shape. That's the engineering model. External demands, we can tolerate them up to a point, okay, but after a certain point we break, we snap. I hope no one wanted that back because it's really broken now. Just as different materials have different elastic limits, how far we can bend it before it's bent out of shape or broken, we have different levels of stress. What will be stressful to one person will not be to another. Okay, and there will be different factors that stress them out. Some people don't experience social stress at all. Some people are really affected by environmental stress. So everyone is different in this way. Some people get really stressed out with social things like giving a lecture in public. Me, I do it every day. It doesn't faze me at all. I'm quite happy doing it. For some people, going to a party might be a really stressful thing. For others, nothing at all. Okay, so everyone's different and everyone responds differently. However, internally, the responses for us are all the same. So this is where I come to the biological model, and this is going to hopefully explain some of those symptoms we looked at. So your brain is amazing. Where's my brain? It's here. This is great teaching aid. My kids have got hold of it, so it's kind of a little bit broken. So here is the human brain. Okay, absolutely amazing thing. Do you know your brain is the most complicated structure in the known universe? More complicated, more sophisticated than any piece of engineering computer technology that's been developed, even an Xbox. So on the inside of the brain, you see, we've got different areas. These are the different lobes. okay, the different sections of the brain. So here at the back, the red bit is called the occipital lobe. This is the bit that's linked to your eyesight, fascinatingly. So if you get a blow to the back of your head that's severe enough, you can go blind. Your eyes still work, okay, but the bit of technology that processes what the eyes are taking in doesn't work anymore. Apparently, right, I love this fact. Apparently, if you find someone that's visually impaired, their eyes, as in the lenses, still work, but this bit doesn't work. Apparently, if you pretend to throw something at them, they will flinch. They won't know why they're flinching, okay, but their brain will be responding. The eyes are taking in the information that something is coming at them, and they will reflexively flinch like that. But please don't go throwing stuff at visually impaired people. It will get me in trouble. So yeah, so there's the occipital lobe. Where are you? You are here. Your personality is here at the front, okay, in the frontal lobe. One of my students said, if that's the frontal lobe, why is that one not the basal lobe? No, it's the frontal lobe, okay? That's where your personality is. If you get injured here, if you get brain damage here, it will affect your personality. Your personality will change. Where do our emotions come from? Well, that's an interesting one. Our emotions come from much further back in the brain, around here. Okay, what's called the limbic system. Now, in terms of evolution, we're talking about the newer bits of the brain and the older bits of the brain. So this outer bit of the brain here, where these lobes are, this is called the neocortex. Neo means new. So in terms of evolution, the further evolved we are as creatures, the more of this we've got. Okay, so creatures further down the evolutionary tree, you know, not so good as us human beings, they have less of the frontal lobe, they have less of this stuff. Okay, so what scientists kind of lazily call our reptile brain is just back here. This is the completely automatic stuff that we don't even have to think about. That's our reptile brain. Our mammalian brain is the limbic system, okay, mammal brain. But then the real human stuff is out here, the personality, the thinking, the consciousness, the awareness, the self-awareness, that's all here, okay? Our emotions and stuff are further back. And this is why emotions work so quickly and so powerfully. Stress happens back here, okay? Conscious, rational decisions happen here. Do you ever notice when you're really stressed out, you feel like you're out of control? It's because your rational brain can't keep up with it. This works faster. This more primitive stuff, it works very fast. What triggers it? Well, I'll put the brain together. So this is the underside of your brain. Okay, so this little dangly bit here, that's your spinal cord. Okay, spinal column comes out of there, which of course joins to every organ and nerve in your body. Okay, underneath the brain, I'm going to hold it up close. Can you see there's a little nodule there and a little nodule there? See the little blips? They are called the amygdala. Sounds like a character out of Star Wars. That's Princess Amidala. But the amygdala are amazing, and a lot of my work revolves around looking at the amygdala and how it makes us behave. The amygdala, does anyone here like Spider-Man or have children that like Spider-Man? No? Yes? What does Spider-Man always say, Kathy? Oh, you can hear me?
Yep.
What does Spider-Man say? Other than, hello, my dear, my name's Spider-Man. He says, my spidey sense is tingling. Just before a bad guy is about, you know, DJ, come on, DJ knows this. Just before a bad guy is about to throw a piano or something at Spider-Man, he goes, oh, my spidey sense is tingling, and he's able to jump out the way in time. Well, your amygdala works like your spidey sense. It's your body's early warning system for danger, okay? And it is on all the time. It is constantly searching for danger, for problems. in your environment. Your eyes and your ears, main sense organs, are connected to this bit. Okay, the information gets there quicker than it gets there. You guys ever been for a walk in the castle grounds and seen a snake and gone, whoa, leapt backwards, and your heart's beating and you're sweating and you're suddenly having a very powerful stress response, and then you go, wait a second, there's no snakes on the Isle of Lewis, and it's a stick. Yeah. Wait a second, there's no snakes on the Isle of Lewis is the rational brain kicking in. It takes a little while longer, but your immediate whoa, jump back response is your mammalian brain working, your caveman brain working. Okay. Alert to danger and getting you ready for danger. Another one that happens quite regularly to people, if you've not had the snake one, you might have had this. You walk into a darkened room, perhaps the bathroom, and there's someone there, and immediately wah, wah, you're ready to fight them kung fu style, and you put the light on and you realize it's just your reflection you've seen in the mirror. Has that happened to anyone? No, of course it has. Of course it has. DJ, happened to DJ, yeah. And again, it's your amygdala working faster than your rational brain. Okay, it works so fast. What does it do? Well, what it does is it sends a message to the hypothalamus, okay, which is part of the brain. Right here. Okay, right in this very primitive part of the brain, sends a message there. The hypothalamus switches on, sends a message woo, down the spinal column, super fast. We're talking fractions of seconds. That message hits your adrenal glands, which are situated just above your kidneys, and releases what? It's a hormone, adrenaline. It's also called epinephrine, but we'll call it adrenaline. Okay, it releases adrenaline, and adrenaline hits your bloodstream, and wallop, you notice a difference. You are suddenly on. Basically, I like to think of adrenaline as the go button for your body. Okay, it is all action when the adrenaline's coursing around your body. And it's the adrenaline coursing around your body that causes all those physiological things we looked at earlier. See, I'm linking it up now. Okay, we're going back to all those things. So where's all those things we said? Muscular tension, sweat, temperature change, trembling, racing heart, butterflies, stomach upsets, stuttering, can't take your mind off things, rapid breathing. Every single one of them is part of what is called the acute stress response. The acute stress response is triggered by the amygdala. Okay, it goes on straight away, and it's all linked to adrenaline, and it is for survival. Okay, it is for survival. So what I've said before about this being the kind of caveman brain, that's the way I'm going to talk about it for a while. Now, I know some people don't really do kind of theory of evolution and stuff. So let's just say it's the way we're built. Okay. Either way, it's the way we're built. So the story I'm going to tell you involves two people. We'll call them Ugg and Doug. Okay. And we're talking thousands of years back in the past. Okay. I'm going to go 10,000 years. No, 15,000 years. That's a safe one. 15,000 years. What were people like 15,000 years ago compared to us now? Mary's right. They'd have been a bit smaller, a bit stockier. Their muscle tone would have been better because they're not sat in front of computers all day. They'd have been a bit hairier, probably. But actually, if we got in a DeLorean time machine, nipped back to then, kidnapped one of them, brought it back here, gave it a shave, stuck a pair of jeans and a Pete and Diesel hoodie on it, you wouldn't actually really be able to tell the difference until they open their mouth and can't talk. You know, that physiologically they would look pretty much the same as we do. Okay, in terms of what we're saying, in terms of evolution, our bodies have actually not changed, and that includes our brain, have not changed a lot in 15,000 years. But boy, the world we live in is different. One of the things that was around 15,000 years ago was the Smilodon. Does anyone know what a Smilodon was? They sound nice, don't they? A smilodon. Oh, lovely. A smilodon is another word for a saber-toothed tiger. And people always go, oh, what, like in Ice Age? And I'm like, yeah, kind of like in Ice Age, except the real saber-toothed tiger would have just eaten the baby and not adopt it. Saber-toothed tigers were horrible, and they were everywhere. They only went extinct about 10,000 years ago. So they were everywhere. Our ancestors, when they were just bimbling around doing their stuff, hunting and gathering, and, you know, they'd have been contending with these creatures all the time. They were a real threat to them. So let's say Ugg and Doug, our pals, they're off hunting. Now, when they went for hunts back then, the food they would hunt, woolly mammoth, big, hairy, pissed off elephants, okay, massive, great beasties, right? And I'd only feel comfortable hunting one of them with a grenade, quite frankly, and I wouldn't even want to get that close to it. But they didn't have grenades, they just had sharpened sticks. Anyhow, they're off hunting this great big elephant thing, the mammoth, right? And they hear a rustling in the bushes. They hear a rustling in the bushes. Now, of the two, Doug has a very highly developed amygdala. Okay, his amygdala works better. His fight or flight response functions much better. Okay, his acute stress response. So when he hears that rustling in the bushes, he goes, ah, there's a threat there. The adrenaline starts to course around his body and making all these physiological things happen. What physiological things happen? Well, we start to breathe faster. When we breathe faster, we're taking in more oxygen. When our heart beats faster, we're pumping that oxygenated blood around the body to the key muscle groups, which you will notice tense up. They are getting ready for action. Whether you're going to stand your ground and fight, that would be these muscle groups, the fighty muscles, or run away, that's the leg muscles. That's what's going to happen. You will also notice the trembling. The trembling is actually adrenaline that's got nowhere to go. Okay, adrenaline is energy. Okay, and if energy doesn't have anywhere to go, you've probably seen this with kids if they're just bouncing off the walls because they're so excited. That energy has to go somewhere. So we've done the heart, we've done the breathing, we've done the trembling. The sweats, DJ, this one blew my mind when I learned it. Why do we sweat when we're stressed? Well, two reasons. First of all, it's your body's internal thermostat. It knows that if you're fighting or running away from something, you're going to get hot. And what happens if we get too hot? We pass out. So the body doesn't want to get too hot. So what it does is it gives us this hot flush, so we start to sweat. That's that woof of heat we get when we're stressed. And then when we start to sweat, the sweat's evaporating off us and cools us down. So the body is preemptively cooling itself before we engage in physical activity. It's amazing. How well designed is that? The secondary usage for this is if you're sweaty, you're slippery. So that saber-toothed tiger is going to have remember, we didn't always walk around wearing clothes. It's going to have a harder time getting hold of you. You're going to slip away from it if you're good and sweaty. So it has a defensive purpose as well. Amazing. Amazing. So what else? Does anyone notice that their hands and feet get cold and numb sometimes as well? DJ saying, yeah. This, again, has a purpose. What's happening is what we call vascular constriction. The blood vessels that feed the hands and the feet actually narrow up and close up. Why? Well, if you're fighting something, I don't know if anyone's ever punched anything, but it hurts. They never show this in the movies when the hero punches the bad guy. No one afterwards goes, ow, like that. It really hurts. But if you are having this acute stress response, your hands go numb, so you can fight harder. Same with your feet. We didn't always wear trainers to run away from things. You'd be running away barefoot. And that saber-toothed tiger, if it's chasing you, isn't going to stop if you tread on a thorn and go, oh, hang on a second, got to get this out. If your feet are numb when you're running, you won't notice. Every single one of these things happens for survival. There's another one. You mentioned you can't think straight. And I said, well, it's more that you can't take your mind off the stressor. Why? Why is that a survival aid? If you're running away from a saber-toothed tiger, you don't want to go, oh, look at that sunset. Isn't that beautiful? If you're fighting that saber-toothed tiger, you don't want to take your eye off it for a minute. So what happens when we are experiencing this stress response is we can only focus on that thing that is stressing us out. That's why we don't take our mind off it. It has a purpose. My favorite one is the churning of your stomach, butterflies, dry mouth, any of these things. That is a really interesting one. Basically, your digestive system shuts down. When the fight or flight system, this acute stress response switches on, it's called our sympathetic nervous system switching on. And when it's really activated like this, it's prioritizing survival. The energy of the body is all directed towards survival, fighting, running away. It's not going to prioritize things like digesting food. So what it does is it actually just shuts down your digestive system. Butterflies, fascinatingly, is the fluttering feeling you feel is when you're getting vascular constriction again, the blood vessels that feed the intestines. The intestines are stopping what they call peristalsis, this movement they do. Now, it does that all the time, pushing the digested food along. But that fluttering feeling you get is when peristalsis is stopping. That's what it is. The what other ones are there? Yeah, what do people say when they're, I was so afraid I pooped myself. Literally, I pooped myself. Now, very often they don't actually, but actually one of the things the body does when we're really, really stressed is we do poop ourselves. It's the body's way of getting this stuff out. So it's quite understandable that when we're very, very stressed, we will experience bowel problems. Okay, because the body doesn't want to be carrying this around when it's stressed. Every single one of these things is meant to happen. Okay, it's not pleasant, it's not nice, but there is a reason for it. And this is the biological model. Okay, this is the biological model, and it's understanding that our brains, the technology, amazing technology that it is, this response is designed for a different world when there were saber-toothed tigers, not for the safe or more safe world that we live in nowadays. Okay, our society has come on leaps and bounds more than our brains have been able to keep up with. Okay, so some people said it's a bit like we're using outdated technology for the world we live in. Right. The thing I find really interesting with this is this is meant to be. So let's go back to Hug and Doug. Doug's got this highly developed amygdala, highly developed stress response system. He hears the rustling in the undergrowth. His amygdala kicks in. His sympathetic nervous system switches on, so his body is ready for action. His mate, Ugg, is not so sharp, not so quick off the ball, and is looking at a flower, picking his nose, whatever. When that saber-toothed tiger leaps from the undergrowth, Doug is ready to act, and he drops his spear and he legs it. His body is ready for this physical exertion because this response has happened. Ugg's not ready. Ugg gets eaten, okay, and dies. Doug goes back to the tribe, okay, and tells everyone how he bravely tried to save his friend's life, how they were attacked by this terrible monster. He bravely fought and fought and fought, but couldn't save his friend's life. He can say whatever he wants. He's the one that survived, okay? He survived. The other one didn't. Doug gets lucky that evening. He gets to pass on his genes, okay? His children will inherit that developed amygdala. Their children, it will be a survival aid to them. Their children will inherit it. Their children will pass it on, and so on and so forth. I saw an amazing lecture, very similar to some of these ideas here I'm sharing today. And the person said, we are the ancestors of the nervous people. And I think that's such a wonderful way to think about it. This has been a wonderful tool. The stress response has been such a wonderful tool to help our species get where it is. The only problem is the world we live in now, it can be a bit of a pain. So that's that acute stress, big burst of it. Another stress hormone that's released, so adrenaline is one of the stress hormones. Another stress hormone that's released, and it tends to be released with long-term stress. So adrenaline is really linked to acute stress, that big short-term burst. But if we experience long-term stress over a long period of time, we get something called cortisol. Okay, now cortisol is really nasty. And long-term stress, the health problems, high blood pressure, increased risk of heart attack and stroke, habitual overbreathing, skin problems, chest pains, aches and pains in muscles, headaches, migraines, and worse yet, and this is a really, really chronic one that's very problematic with stress, is immunosuppression. There have been studies that have shown that chronic stress over a long period of time actually shrinks your lymphatic tissue, your lymph nodes, which produce white blood cells, which fight infection. If you are stressed for long periods of time, and you will notice this happens again and again and again to teachers. Every year I see this amongst my lecturing colleagues, our teachers. You're working and working and working the last few months of the year with exams and pressure and pressure and pressure. It's awful. You're under huge amounts of stress. And then you go on holiday. You're suddenly relaxed. And what happens the first week of holiday?
You catch the cold.
You catch a cold. You get ill without fail. And this is linked to that. What happens is your white blood cells, your lymphatic tissue shrinks as a result of being under stress for a long period of time. And your immune system is shot so that when you catch a small cold, it hits you really badly. Okay. So that is some of the biological stuff I wanted to talk about stress. Now, I'm aware I've gone over time. Are you guys happy to go for another 15 minutes? Because I'm going to talk about some of the ways we can manage stress. As you can tell, this is a real interest of mine, and I love sharing this knowledge. I think knowledge is power. I often say to clients, this is what I do with clients as well, a bit of what we call psychoeducation. Because when you know what's going on inside your body, when you know why it's happening, I think it helps you get an understanding of it. I'm suddenly drenched with sweat and trembling. Fascinating. My body is prepping itself for a survival thing. But actually, I don't need to run away from anything. I don't need to fight anything. I just need to go in there and talk to my boss. I'm having a primitive response, a caveman response to a modern day situation. This sort of thing can actually help us rationalize it. What we're bringing in there is our rational brain. Okay. Hey, so managing stress. I'm going to divide it into two things. Unhealthy responses and healthy responses. And I'm going to talk a little bit about each. Very, very common unhealthy responses. If you suffer from stress, you are burning up a lot of energy. Okay, cortisol, great news, guys. Cortisol, the long-term stress hormone, is absolutely amazing at making you lose weight. It absolutely burns up fat. It devours fat. The body, to keep going at that high level of stress, the body cannibalizes itself. It literally eats the fat and burns it up for energy. Brilliant. Let's all go on the stress diet, I hear you say. No, we don't go on the stress diet because actually cortisol has a really nasty side effect that when you have been, oh, little Mary, hello, Mary. When you have been burning up all these fats with the cortisol, using it as energy, you end up craving sugary, salty junk food. Have you guys noticed when you are stressed that your diet is abysmal? You just want to eat. Me, I'm a fiend for crisps. Space Raiders, I love them. I could eat packets and packets and packets of them. And I know when I'm stressed, because I will just eat junk food, biscuits, crisps, blah, 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 constantly pushing them into my mouth. And what you're doing is you're replacing the fats and stuff that you've burnt up. But inevitably, what ends up happening is you replace a bit more than you used up. So stress does make us put on weight. Some lucky people are able to exercise a bit more willpower, and the stress makes them lose weight. And you do see people that look very gaunt after being under stress for a long period of time. But unfortunately, for most of us, we put weight on. Other ways, this is what we call self-medication. Oh, I've had a rubbish day, I'm going to have a glass of wine. Oh, I'll just have a entire tub of Ben & Jerry's to myself. You know, we self-medicate. And, you know, I'm not going to preach here. I'm not going to say, oh, we should not drink at all and we should not do this stuff. But it is not a healthy way of dealing with stress. Okay. For example, if we drink, now I like a drink. I have to say, I belong to a wine club. I've joined a wine club this year. It's amazing. It's like Christmas. You get these huge crates of wine turning up and stuff. But it's important when we're stressed not to drink too much, because actually alcohol, although it helps us get to sleep easier, we don't have such good quality sleep as a result of it. Okay, we get less REM sleep, which is dream sleep, and we get less deep sleep, which is restorative sleep. In other words, we just basically doze in a kind of light sleep when we've had a drink. Okay, and we end up waking up feeling, well, not just hungover, but tired and less ready for the day ahead of us. Okay, so alcohol's not a really good one. Other people self-medicate with drugs and things like this. And again, any form of self-medication, you are not actually addressing the stressor. You are just making yourself feel better temporarily. Okay, the long-term implications of it are well known. Alcoholism, you know, massive weight gain, things like this. So that's one unhealthy response. Another one is avoidance or denial. Okay, oh, I'm fine. Oh, I'll get through it. Oh, it will be all right. Or just pretending there's not a problem. Don't look like the sort that's ever been in a fist fight. It is literally what you're talking about, is literally what people do when they are getting into a fight.
Oh.
It's fascinating. Your body is preparing itself for action. Okay. If you think about it, when we're tense, when we're stressed, we feel like this, don't we?
Yes.
Like a boxer. We're just sticking the jaw out, clenching the jaw. If your jaw's clenched, one of the reasons we clench our jaw, if your jaw's clenched, if you get punched, your teeth won't rattle together so much. Your jaw's less likely to get broken. Seriously, it is something we do to gear ourselves up for action. So the awareness of it. One thing I would say, Morag, is the mindfulness. If you notice you are clenching, deliberately, purposefully unclench.
Right.
Do the complete opposite. If you notice you are like that, take a moment, take a big deep breath, okay? And as you breathe out, relax everything. Drop the shoulders. Try and loosen the neck, open the mouth, allow it to open up, and stretch out that tension. It's a kind of conscious awareness of what we are physiologically doing. The problem is when we don't notice it and we're holding that position for a while. Okay.
Can I ask, on my Garmin watch tells me when I'm stressed. Apparently.
Oh, wonderful.
And I just wondered how accurate you think those kind of things are. I assume it's based on heart rate because it measures heart rate. But...
Yeah, it will be based on heart rate. I imagine it doesn't do blood pressure. They're pretty accurate. I mean, there are lots of reasons why your heart rate can increase. So I think that's always worth bearing in mind. I don't know the Garmin watches. I wear a Casio, so it's not I'm not particularly clued up on these ones. There are some really interesting things. Does it measure your sleep as well? what stages of sleep you get.
Yeah, it does, but it's definitely not very accurate on that, because it
Yeah.
tells me I'm asleep when I'm just like reading my book. So I don't know if
No,
I'm
no, that's actually, that is very accurate, because when you are reading your book, you will be activating your parasympathetic nervous system. You will be in a state of real relaxation. You won't be moving a lot. Your body will interpret it as sleep. I think that's actually quite accurate. So yeah, if you're moving around a lot, if you're doing a lot of fast motions, and if your heart is beating very fast, then it will probably interpret that as stress. But you know, you could be doing aerobics.
Yeah, I think, I mean, it should know when you're doing exercise. Like you've told it when you're doing exercise, I guess. So it also, yeah. But yeah, I just wondered if they were kind of a load of nonsense. Or
no, I don't think it's necessarily a load of nonsense. It will not be picking up on your emotional state. It will be picking up on the physiological things happening to you. So being able to kind of say, okay, you know, it says I'm stressed, and checking myself, how am I actually feeling? Do you think it correlates that it's picking up on stress when you're actually stressed?
yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
In a day, like it tells you if you've had enough restful moments that day, and I reckon overall it's pretty accurate. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. So it tells you when you need a chill out time. That's nice. That's nice. Some gadgets very soon. I tell my students, I've got a lot of students that are going off to study psychology at university when I finally sort their grades out. I've kind of been saying to them, well, you don't do psychology. Don't do psychology. I'm not a psychologist. I teach psychology. I'm a psychotherapist. But psychology is going to be completely superseded in the next few years by neuroscience, the study of the brain. That's where all the big advances are being made at the moment. And the one of the things that's happening is you can get, you know, a lot of apps and things that actually now you get little headsets and it measures your brain waves. And again, understanding what's happening in your brain, the activity in your brain can be linked to stress as well. And there are some of these like apps that have games where you have to force yourself to meditate and you watch your brain waves slow down as you're meditating and stuff. Very, very cool.
I'm just on you go, Kathy.
Okay, thank you. Can I ask, for children, well, in children, can facial and bodily fix your sign of stress?
Yes, I mean, there are always different things. Tics can be adrenaline that's just got nowhere else to go, twitching and you know, but it can be other things as well. And I think in terms of children, there are a huge number of developmental things going on that could be linked to it. But I think certainly in my experience working with young people, if I've worked with young people that tic, that twitch, they tic and twitch more when they're stressed. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I was just going to make a comment that it's sort of quite surprising how the brain has evolved so little, really, in all that time in humans.
Yeah.
You know, if we're still so sort of focused on this kind of flight or fright sort of responses to things. Anyway, the other comment, just really on your, I loved the presentation. I thought it was really interesting. You might just want to think about some different names for Ugg and Doug, like
Ugg and Doug, sorry, yeah.
Well, Uggina or Dougina or something.
Uggina and Dougina, okay.
But it did raise something for me, and you know, is there any studies? I'm sure there are, about the way stress affects men and women differently.
I'm so glad you mentioned that. Is something I had to cut for Noi DJ by going on a little bit more. Men and women respond differently to stress, and it's so fascinating. Do you know what is absolutely, here's a good one, here's a great one. Do you know what's really good for women and stress? Thing, right, about adrenaline in women that can be negated. it switches off the adrenaline with oxytocin. Oxytocin is the love hormone that is produced when you have a cuddle, when you make love, when you kiss someone, when you spend time with someone that you really like. So just being around friends, having a cuddle though is a really great way to produce oxytocin. And there have been studies that have shown that women, it's something to do with estrogen and oxytocin. The combination of them actively works against the adrenaline and calms them down. For men, fascinatingly, because of the testosterone in men, it doesn't work the same way. So yeah, how do women very often calm themselves down when feeling stressed? It's going spending time with their friends, go and having that social contact, that face-to-face meetings, the chats, the hugs, the friendship and things. Men military, don't we? We go off and sulk in our man cave. Yeah. So yeah, thank you for bringing that up, Mary. Yeah, there is definite differences in how people respond, and oxytocin seems to be more beneficial for women than for men.